I interviewed you a couple of years ago now when we were doing a season about female directors in the UK, and we spoke about this project you were working on and the articles that you were gathering, because that's the way that you usually work. And you were telling me about how it was going to be about female hysteria, and I think at the time it was possibly going to be about nurses. I might be remembering that incorrectly, but I want you to talk a little bit, I know that you have been talking quite a lot about this process, about the process of gathering the articles and how that eventually turns into a film.
I don't think I ever did one about nurses, but I should do.
Maybe that was just me making it up.
But,
that's the next one.
I think where that might have come from, because I gathered a lot of articles on mass psychogenic illness, and they happen in closed institutions. And I probably talked to you about one I found that was in a medical journal, but it was about one that happens in a female ward of a hospital, where the patients, there was an epidemic of people thinking they were pregnant, even the 85-year-old woman on the ward. And I think there's quite a famous case, not Parliament Hill Hospital or the hospital there, there was a documented case of mass hysteria among the nurses there from, I think, the 70s.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of research into how a classic case of mass psychogenic illness would manifest itself. And I was rather excited because a couple of days ago, like the head of psychiatry, who I'd spoken to, he's like the head of the whole of psychiatry in Britain, but I'd spoken to him 10 years ago and over the years, and he actually said it does actually mimic exactly what happens in a classic case. So mass psychogenic illnesses, a lot of research, they go back to medieval times. They then would often be reactions to possibly the idea of demons or something religious. Nowadays, there would be maybe people smelling something at an airport and thinking, or not an airport, in a school, or thinking maybe there was, a sort of a situation going on, a threat of terrorism or something toxic in the food. But in the 60s, what fascinated me was a lot of the cases I was looking at, they seemed to be around sexual anxiety. And most documented cases happen in schools, and most cases happen amongst women, particularly adolescent women. So all those things just, like, to me, were everything I'm interested in.
It's one of the things I love about the film, and I'm sure the audience agree, is the idea that, everyone's experienced that kind of group feeling where everyone's sort of feeling the same thing in a group at school. I know when I was at school, it wasn't actually the girls, it was the boys. They were always trying to make themselves faint. It was always the boys.
Yeah. Did they do that squeezing
Yes.
technique?
Yeah, that was it. You're not going to learn how to faint at school. But how does all of that research and articles, how do you decide that's going to be a documentary, that's going to be a feature film? How do you pull out the moments that you want to make into?
Well, I think when I made Dreams of a Life, about Joyce Vincent, and the real person that had laid dead for 3 years, it felt I had to connect that to the fact that it really happened and to have the people that really knew her in it. With this, I felt if I just sort of went around looking at episodes and trying to find the people, it could become quite episodic and illustrative. And what I really wanted to do I think Dreams of Life was about a case of extreme isolation. And I think with this film, I was excited because it was about collectivity and being very visible. Because, a classic case is that everybody's going to notice you. So I loved sort of taking that leap. And I've forgotten the question. So I'm going on. What was it?
Making the articles into
So with this, I really wanted to look at the kind of psyche of a teenager and to kind of look at mass hysteria in a way, or mass psychogenic illness, as a visible, almost a visible idea of what adolescence is. So the girls are going through this change or this feeling about, and it is sort of sexual awakening and political awakening. So they're sort of making visible what's inside. So I didn't just want to, see someone fall. I wanted to kind of create what it feels like to fall, what it feels like to be young. And so that was sort of what was great about doing fiction and drama. I've tried to answer the question, but I don't know if I did.
Amazing,
really.
Amazing. The idea of sexual power and sexual awakening and the the sort of the way it plays into the many themes of nature, of a little bit of magic with a K, you know, the sort of ley lines and witches and that kind of thing. There's almost so many paths to explain why they're fainting. The one I love is the picking at the wall in the bathroom.
Is there asbestos?
Is there asbestos? Yeah, and so you're like leaving little clues to decide. I mean, that was on purpose, obviously, but how did you decide? Sort of like, is there one that is the reason? But
well, you see,
how did you
you see what I love about mass psychogenic illness is they are still mysteries. None of the medical profession really know exactly why they occur. And then in the popular imagination, or if you're around one, people will put it down to, you know, maybe it is a poison. Like in Leroy, where there was a big one about 2 or 3 years ago at Leroy High School, Erin Brockovich, the environmentalist, marched into town and said there'd been a chemical spill 50 years before that was affecting the girls. Even though it was only girls and it wasn't affecting anyone else, she said it was to do with the chemical spill. So people often have these reasons, so they would put it down to maybe, you know, something magical, or the devil, or the occult, or emotions becoming physical, because the definition of psychogenic is that it is your mental state manifesting itself in physical symptoms, and you feel ill. So I wanted to implant in the film all the possibilities of what was causing it, but without categorically saying why, because I don't really know why. And actually, you start, when we were making the film, I started to believe, because we're in this very magical place and area, and I did start to believe in ley lines and all of that. And I started to believe in everything. and also, I read a lot. You see, what I was trying to do in my research and writing the script was read the stuff that young people would have read in the 60s. So they were reading Ouspensky, who was a Russian philosopher that lived in Surrey. And wrote, and he would never write anything down. You could only you could only transcribe what he said. And so he'd just be, you know, it's quite fascinating stuff. So I imagine these girls are trying to read something out of Ouspensky. And somebody like Carl Jung, was writing about the collective unconscious, which really fascinated me and was that kind of currency at the time. And he believed that he believed in symbolism, which obviously filmmakers do, but and he believed that the collective unconscious was represented by a pool of water, hence the water in the film felt like that was part of something. So I don't know. So I kind of believe it all. I believe it was everything.
Excellent. And did you give the cast ideas as to why this was happening?
No.
And did they make their own backstories up? Did you provide?
Well, they just really believed in the world. So I try, especially with the young people, I tried to give as little instruction as possible so that they could, they didn't have to articulate in words all of this stuff. So in a way, we came to it through music, I suppose, playing music. And in rehearsals, we played Mary Hopkin a lot, the song at the beginning that then Florence Pugh plays, Abby. And whenever we put it on, they would just cry, because they associated it in their heads with Abby dying.
Right.
And so music was really useful to not have to explain things. So I tried to do as little, just try not to interfere with the way somebody might see it, because that might be very interesting. And that's what happened with the Tracy Thorn, because while while we were filming it, I had a dream an actual dream at night, because Maisie thought I had a daydream, because she didn't think I had dreams anymore. When you get older, you don't dream. I love that. I had an actual dream that Tracy Thorn had done the music, and then asked her, and she went, well, I've never done it before. And I love that nobody's bringing baggage to it. And I didn't describe anything to her about what I wanted particularly. She just saw a little glimpse, and then brought her sense of being in a school band, her experience of, being a girl to it.
What point did you bring her on? Because it feels completely important to the film. Like, you couldn't have had any other music.
Yeah.
At what point did you bring her on?
She was giving us music as soon as we started editing.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways films are made, people use what they call temp music, temporary music, that then they show the cut to the composer who then has to emulate it or create, and that often becomes very difficult, and whole scores to films can be rejected. I think Kubrick rejected a whole score. So for me, that it's as important as imagery to start using sound early and music early, because otherwise you get, you could get used to something temporary, and then it's not very helpful. So Tracy became an organic part of the film.
Greta, then, I mean, at what point in the process were you brought on board? When did you read the script? Who was cast at the time?
Maisie was cast.
Yeah.
You had your main girls, didn't you?
I think we went for the girls first.
Yeah.
I think so, didn't we?
Yeah.
But you were always my Miss Mantel.
Oh,
She was up on my wall.
oh. I just remember we had such a lovely meeting, and immediately I was very drawn to your emotional connection with the story. You know, you were emotional when you told me about it. It's kind of rare. It's nice when somebody, a filmmaker who is really in the driving seat and holding the steering wheel and knows what they're doing, persuades you of something, vision that they have, or a kind of language that they have that sounds so different. And so I was immediately, I think I said yes when we met,
Yeah,
didn't I?
I was
Maura?
like so excited. I could barely speak, really.
Yeah, and it was funny that I hope it's all right to say this, that in our conversation, it came out. I think I first mentioned Picnic at Hanging Rock, which was something that, it was a film that I remember, I was about 17 at the time that it came out. But I remember Rachel Roberts, and what she did was just totally inspiring to me. It was a very multi-layered and very, a performance that was very true to something inside her. And at 17, I admired her so much. I'd seen her in her earlier films when she was younger, but that role had always been something that I kept with me as an actor, thinking, you know, one day when I get older, I'd like to be like Rachel Roberts was in that film. You know, I've always felt like an actor and ready to play character, and she did it so truthfully.
And you didn't wear any makeup in the film, did you? In The Falling, you were like, I don't want anything. I remember that.
That's right. It's the first time I've never worn makeup.
There was
well, it
nothing,
was just so
nothing.
delicious to play a character who could be as ugly as anything, because she was ugly inside, and or she had something that had made her, that had blocked her and made her very cold and mean. But you always connected me with that, her own pain, and so I remember. Actually, I can't remember the name of the hairdresser now. It's too long ago.
Who did your hair?
Yeah,
Christine.
That's right. And she was ready to swirl my hair into something very, 1960s that I know would have looked a little bit too sort of Grace Kelly kind of look, and that kind of Hitchcock thing that they like to do. Well, they always like to do with me. and I said to her, no, this woman is blocked. She was emotionally blocked back in her youth. So when she was 25 or something, that was 25 years ago. So count back from 1963 to 25 years ago. And that's where her hairstyle would have got fixed. So do me something from then and be as ugly as you like with it. And I think it does look very ugly.
It really makes a difference, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that too often when the art side, the makeup and hair and sometimes wardrobe and art department, they've got these books where they want to be so true. If you say it's 1963, is that when the film is 1969, whatever the year?
But Miss Mantell was in 63. She was in, she
even
was in
earlier.
the 40s, 30s.
Yeah, they always want to be so accurate. They've got all these books of how the hair was, or how the hats were, or what lipstick people were wearing, and they want to be so true to that often actors have a battle with character and saying, well, actually, I know everybody was wearing that colour, and the makeup artist will say a woman wouldn't go out without that colour lipstick on. Well, yes, a woman wouldn't go out without that sort of lipstick on conventionally, but there would have been women who didn't for some reason because they chose not to. And it's sometimes quite hard to shift them. But Christine was
she
great.
Was great.
And
she was
I
like
loved what
from
we came
3
up with.
generations of hair and makeup.
That's right, that's right.
She's a proper dynasty.
And the locations that you're working on, I mean, because it looks as though most of it's shot on location rather than...
it's all location,
yeah. I imagine that made a big difference to the sort of way you were feeling when you were acting. It really feels like there's so much attention to detail. Like you say, you know...
Have you talked about the school we were?
No.
Not yet, no.
Greta had to get her handwriting up to scratch to write on the blackboard. Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
It was a bit... You had to make it more formal.
Oh, I love that. But then, you know, I did have this sort of revenge I've been holding in me to wreak against my evil history teacher. So it was very nice. I had lots of ideas in my head about her. But the school, the location we were in was an abandoned school, wasn't it?
It'd been abandoned for 18 years, so
18.
Janie Levick, the production designer, and her team had to do an awful lot of work on it. We had to repair windows, we had to paint it, we had to paint the floor as though it was quite modern. And also, it'd been abandoned in 2 weeks, so it was quite weird.
That was the spooky thing.
Because there was like blazers and violins hanging about, and the bust in the film in the art room that's like almost looks like Abby. We found it there in a wardrobe because it had been a boarding school, so it was quite chilling. But what was great, it became like we were on a studio. Well, to me, I've never been on one, but you have.
Oh, no, it was fantastic because it was a real place and there was a sort of ghostly feeling about it. Because, as you say, they left in 2 weeks. It was like it was a private school, and so something had gone wrong with the financing. The school had suddenly closed, and you felt that things were left a little bit like, you know, when the ash fell on Pompeii and everything was frozen, and some of the artwork was still there. They hadn't had
there was
it
a
closed
lot of
so
artwork
quickly
there.
that there wasn't time for people to come and collect the things that they'd left in the classrooms. So it was very spooky and very helpful for all of us.
You mentioned that Maisie was already on board when you spoke with Greta, and I know that Maxine Peake is a huge part of the film for you and a sort of working relationship, not least because of your Manchester connection. At what point did you cast everyone else, and what was that process like?
I mean, I think we got the girls first because we knew it would be harder to look for the girls and find the girls, and because most of them were unknown apart from Maisie. So that was and then the actors were really meetings and offers, so meeting Greta. So that was crossing my fingers really when I met Greta, hoping, because I just felt, I don't know, I've really admired all of her work, and I was so pleased. I mean, the line when you're in the staff room, the middle-aged women line about we're the misunderstood ones. So I just think she's a legend. So to have her, but I didn't really then get rehearsal. I had a lot of rehearsal time with the young people, but with the adult actors, if you like, they had more of schedules things, so we didn't have so much of that. But I did say to Greta, which she completely didn't listen to me about, but I said it would be very helpful, Greta, if you can be really horrible to the girls off the set, when we're not doing the scenes and stuff. And I went into the other room where they were all hanging out, and Greta's like, "You're so beautiful," and "Oh, you're darling, you're wonderful," and all that. I'm like, "Oh God!" But then, as soon as we went in the classroom, they were completely terrified of her, and she would only have to look at them as Miss Bantel, and they were sitting up straight, and they got the giggles, didn't they? They'd get the giggles because young people now aren't quite used to that level of authority, but then when Greta as Miss Mantel turned it on, they were so frightened of her.
Well, I've got this treasured possession, which was one of the girls did a cartoon, a caricature, just like we used to do at school of our evil teachers. And I'd say that the caricature didn't look like me, but it did have in it every detail of Miss Mantel that I wanted to show. So it was like she got every little thing that I was doing.
It was so good.